What's up, everyone? Welcome to Unmasked, where things are discovered, uncovered, brought to the light, and made known. I'm your host, Lamar Barrett, coming live to you from PG County, Maryland. If you're interested in finding out about the untold stories being behind a college coach, this is the show for you. Being a former assistant men's college basketball coach for 16 years, there are so many untold stories behind the scenes in the life of a college basketball coach. Now, let's unmask them. Today's guest is a young and bright assistant, a former co-worker for 3 years, a great friend, and someone I consider a brother, and also a Boston, Massachusetts native, Matt Wolff. Now, I'm going to read a little bit about Matt's bio and talk about him. And, he's actually played at Boston University for his dad. And a lot of times I had Phil Martelli on early, and he played for his dad, and he talked about that a little bit. Matt, he played. He was a pivotal part of his dad's team, and, he had success, and he probably knew he wanted to get into coaching probably shortly after graduating from college and going into the workforce. So played at Boston University, got into corporate America for a year, and then actually went to American University, where he's been the last 10 years. First 3 years as a director of basketball ops, where I was actually fortunate to work with him for 3 years when he was young coming into the business. I thought he did a terrific job there. And then we left with Jeff Jones to go to Old Dominion. Matt stayed on, where he's been the assistant coach for the last 7 years. And actually, after the first year we left, Matt was an assistant coach on that on the NCAA tournament team, the team that won the league title. And next year they ended up going to the championship game. So Matt has done a terrific job at American University. I only expect big things from him. I see him as a great head coach in this business going forward. So I just want to welcome to the show my friend, Matt Wolff.
LB, I appreciate you having me. You left out that we had the exact same start date at American University. Did orientation together, ate Subway for 3 straight years. No, I appreciate you having me. I'm happy to be here.
All right, Matt. Like I said, I appreciate you coming. Let's get right into being unmasked. And it's interesting that you said that. Like, we had the exact start date, the same start date. And it leads into my first question, actually, is like, and you've been around basketball, so it's a little different from you. Basketball family, dad played, coached at the highest level, sister was a star at UConn. So your brother played at Brown University when I was there. So as a hockey player, so we all know, man, and there's no handbook to being a college coach. Like, you just kind of like thrown out there. This is what you do. I always say car salesmen and college basketball coaches, they're probably the only profession that there's no training. You just, hey, figure it out, go and do this job. But tell me about your first day, first week, first month, after things are done with human resources and orientation, especially when no one gives you direction. Now, it could be like you had 3 years as a director of basketball ops, but it could even be when you started with Mike Brennan at American. Like, what was that like?
Well, I would say going back to when I started with Jeff Jones at American, I was fortunate, like you said, there's no handbook for being a college basketball coach, but I have been around college basketball coaches my entire life. So I've had guys to look up to, the guys to point to be like, hey, that's how you do an individual workout. That's how you host a recruit. That's how you talk to parents. That's how, everything from how you, talk to messing around with the players in the locker room to keeping things light. So, guys like, Jason Williford and Orlando Vandross and Sean Ryan, who's a high school coach now up in Massachusetts, but they were terrific in just that part of it. So, I probably wasn't, we're talking about privilege in these days with everything that's going on. I was definitely privileged to know those guys and to have a feel for what the office was going to be like. But I can remember that first day, man, after we got done with orientation, and just, it was a weird time to start. It was June. I think it was June. It might have been June 10th, something like that. So you guys were all gearing up to go out recruiting in the next, month. And, I was just kind of trying to find something to do. So I started going back and watching all the old, all the last couple years games from American University, get a better feel for how JJ coached, for how they played, for the guys on the team. But I tell you, the funny part was I didn't know, I'd been in corporate America for a year, like you said. So I was used to somebody telling me, hey, your lunch break is at 12:30. So I didn't know when I could leave my desk. I remember I was so hungry. I went the whole day without eating. So I didn't eat until Jeff left his office.
I mean, and that's what it is. It's like you said, you've been around it, but until you experience it, it's a whole different story, man. It's a whole different story.
Mm-hmm.
You've been in it 7 years, man. So you've seen your dad do the recruiting. But this is your story. What was your best and worst recruiting story? Because we know that recruiting is like the lifeline of college basketball.
Uh-huh.
That's how you win and lose games. Everybody always say, got to get players. But what was your best and worst recruiting stories?
Oh, I remember I was trying to get to Hartford for the basketball tournament in July. And I was running around I want to say I was flying in from Texas or something. And I had a layover in BWI. And out of nowhere, they couldn't, they canceled my flight. Well, they didn't cancel my flight, but they had overbooked my flight. So this is like a best and worst story. So they overbooked my flight, and they actually, I've never seen this happen before. They were like, they kept one up and hey, we got to get we'll give you $500 and, a travel voucher for wherever you want to go in the country. And they couldn't get anybody to give their seat up. So they ended up bumping me. And it was like a world. It happened so fast. A lady called me over the desk. She actually wrote me a check for $2,000 because that's what they have to pay the people if they take your seat. And then she was like, we can get you into Long Island and you can drive from there, but you got to go right now. So she just handed me a $2,000 check, and I sprinted to the gate where the other flight was at. And I 2.5 hours later, I was in Long Island, and I was driving in the middle of the night up to Hartford. And I think I left my phone charger in the airport. So I was all discombobulated. So I guess that was a good and bad. I got some money out of the deal, but I had to make sure it was compliant. And then there's been other bad ones where, you head down to head down to a 3.5 hour drive for a practice or, a scrimmage or something. It gets canceled. But, I've had a lot of good experiences too. I think of a guy, Tom Nelson, that works for Mass Rivals, and he coaches at Brimmer and May. I spent a lot of time, recruiting his guys, and, we become friends. And, that's where, I think in this business, it's good if you can come, with recruiting. You got to, you mentioned it was like a car salesman, but I've always watched the guys that and watching you, to be honest, this is my sat right next to you for 3 days. It's got to be genuine. And when you're genuine, I think the people that you're talking to, end up, treating you like a friend, and then the friendships kind of, naturally happen. So the good ones have been, with the high school coaches and the AAU coaches I've become friends with.
That's actually really good, because you don't think about it. Travel, it comes into play on these things. So that's actually pretty good. $2,000 not bad either.
No, not bad. Not bad. Not bad.
Matt, and everyone, you've been it long enough, so you got to give up a lot of stuff. You work. People don't realize that college coaches work 360 days a year. You're always on your phone. You're trying to set up when this kid can come to campus. You could be on vacation and you still on the phone, talking. So what did you have to give up achieving your current level of success?
Well, I think you kind of hit it on the head. You're, it's not a job where you can, where you get home and you can kind of leave the work at the office. So I think I had to give up some of my personal life they kind of meld together, if that makes sense, which is good and bad. I think that, like I said, if, playing at BU and becoming friends now as an adult with the guys that were coaching me, if they didn't allow me in their personal lives, we wouldn't be friends now. And that's kind of how I look at it with our players, so, I think you give up, my wife might get mad sometimes when I'm texting her, take a call at dinner, or, on vacation, everybody's sitting at the beach and I got to go take an hour-long phone call with the, the academic people about an incoming recruit. It's things like that, but I think it makes it all worth it. It's, once you get into practice and in the games and you get to, you still get a sense of that competition that goes along with coaching.
Good stuff. I always say this, like, you know what? Everybody goes into scout reports. You play good, tough teams. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But like, you do got scout reports. Like, what was your best and worst scout report? Because sometimes you can do your best scout report, have your worst game, but then you can do your worst scout report, and then the team ends up playing well. Like, you have any of those? Like, what's your best and worst scout report?
Well, I definitely in my mind have what I think is the hardest in our league. Lafayette, Fran O'Hanlon. I've probably been involved with scouting them for I think every year 7 years I've been with Coach Brennan. And I just think the guy's an offensive genius. So it's hard to prepare for for the way they play. You try to go over the actions but they play a lot like we play, so if you're talking about taking away something or switching on something, their players are able to make reads and kind of play off that. So we've definitely got sliced a couple times in playing them. But best, I'm trying to, I think that once we get into our league, I'm fortunate, and as Coach Brennan watches so much film, credit to him. We do break down the scouts the same way we did when we were together at AU. But, if we're getting ready to play, Team X, Coach Brennan's probably watched every single game they've played up to that point. So he has an idea of what he wants to do on defense, and we may talk about it a little bit here and there. But it's more, for me, it's more, it's more getting the offense ready to run through the scout team. So I would say, Lafayette and Fran O'Hanlon are never easy to prepare for.
I got you. Biggest challenge you have experienced since you have become a coach?
Well, I haven't. Like I said, I think I've led a pretty privileged coaching life with my dad being, a college basketball coach for my entire life. Now, I think that it has its benefits and its downfalls, similar to kind of how you touched about my playing career. A lot of people might, and still might think like, hey, he played at BU because his dad was the coach, or, he got the job at American because, Jeff Jones is his dad's friend. And, while those things, I don't think they're necessarily always true. I think there have been probably instances where if I had just played for somebody else in college, you're able to have, your college coach call on your behalf. And for me, I got to have my dad calling on my behalf, which I try not to do, which I'm lucky I got people like you in my life that can reach out to people for me. But, I haven't had a ton of things where I think, like we were talking about a little bit before earlier, I think you get, it's hard to get jobs in this profession. So it's like, I've always looked at being at American, even though I've been here for 10 years, every season starts fresh for me. So it's like, you can't let yourself get, feeling like you've plateaued just because you've been somewhere for too long. Because I would say that's a hard part of the profession is everybody wants to move up. Everyone wants to coach at a higher level, be a head coach. But for me, I've seen guys that are coaching and, get let go for whatever reason, or staff gets fired for losing, and then they're out of jobs. So, anytime I have I'm fortunate as hell to have a job at American and to be able to coach for a guy like Mike Brennan. Every year we kind of go into it.
Awesome. Now that kind of, you know what? It's interesting because I heard some things in it. I'm gonna see if there's any similarity. But like, do you ever find that there are things about you that people might misunderstand? Like, what are
they? You know, I think sometimes maybe I come off as unapproachable. I don't think I am. You know, I don't. You know, I think. You know, I don't. I think what people. I think players sometimes more so than like coaches in our profession. They have a hard time really understanding where we're coming from as coaches. So I think sometimes that the players more than you know, your coaching peers misunderstand you because they don't, you know, they're competitive and they want to win and they're playing hard, but you know, they don't quite, it doesn't quite resonate with them that, hey, this is you know, this is our livelihood. We're doing everything we can to possible to get you ready for this game, to win, to be successful, to get yourself better. You know, and I think a lot of times they realize it later in their career, but I think sometimes their freshman, sophomore years, you know, there's some pushback. There's some misunderstandings.
Got it. So like one thing I like when you came in at the beginning, you were young, like you were close enough in age so you could kind of talk with the players a little bit. They could understand a little bit. And I know you've grown. I've talked to you quite often. And like, you know, we're always educators in this business, but like, what would you try to teach your players besides basketball? Like, what do you teach them?
I think just having accountability, you know, is the biggest thing for me. You know, I think, you know, you got to, you know, as you get into college, you know, everything is harder. You know, practices are harder, academics are harder, games are harder, you know, and it's easy for guys to, you know, be like, you know, the coach was too hard on me, you know, and as like, for example, like when we got going, you know, Danny Munoz is a good example. You know, he had been on a recruiting trip that I actually hosted him at Boston University, committed to BU. And then when my dad got fired, he ended up going to American kind of last minute, you know, so I had a relationship with him where, you know, he would get, like every player, get mad at the coaches and, you know, they're too hard on me or da-da-da-da. And I'd be like, come on, you know, I'd be able to more like a peer say, hey man, they're just trying to get you over the hump, you know, where now I think as I've gotten a little older and, you know, it's guys I've recruited, you know, it's not quite as easy to relate to them on a, you know, on that level, like you said, where you're similar in age and you just got done playing. You know, now I got to try to point it out in different ways and watch more film and, you know, hold them accountable for what they're doing. And when I say that, I just mean, you know, like, you know, you see all these coaches put quotes out where, you know, you get what you put into it. You know, and that's what I try to tell, you know, with these guys, is I'm always available to work on your game, you know, but I can only make you come in and work on your game for the hours that we're allowed to work, you know, and if you want to get stuff pre-practice, you know, I mean, you know me, I dress like a lot of times I'm practicing. So I'm down there 30 minutes before. I got basketball sneakers on. You want to do whatever you want to do. I'm down there trying to help you get better, but, you know, don't come complaining. You know, I can remember you telling Troy Brewer that, you know, don't come complaining about shooting a percentage you don't want to shoot if you haven't gotten the work in for the 3 months leading up to the season. So, you know, and that goes into all aspects of life. It's, you know, I think it's important to get that across to them too, even with their, you know, with their academics, of course, but, you know, once they start doing internships and, you know, having emails that they need to respond to, it sounds like a simple thing, but it's, you know, it's beginning to, you know, take responsibility and be accountable like an adult.
It's good stuff, man. That's really good stuff. You've been in this 10 years, man. So it's been it's been, you know what, like you get over that 10-year stretch, you becoming a vet. You know, that's how it is. So,
and you get a little mug from American University that says 10 years on it, which is nice.
Wow. What are your best and worst memories in coaching?
I would say, I mean, the best was going to the NCAA tournament, no doubt. And you touched on it. It was, you know, it was our first year with Coach Brennan, and it was a completely new staff other than myself. So obviously I had been there for 3 years already. So Coach Brennan's first year was my fourth year. So it was the seniors on the team, Tony Rablicki, were guys that I was there with they were freshmen when me and you first started. So we were fortunate in the players that you guys left over. I mean, we had studs, we had guys that, the year that JJ's last season, I think we only won 10 games. But we had Pee Wee Gardner sitting out. You had Jesse Reed getting better at a rapid rate. You had Tony Rablicki getting better at a rapid rate. So we were fortunate in the team that we had, but I think it was extra special for me. I hadn't recruited any of the guys on the team, but I had been around for their development and seen them kind of grow, and to see them win, and to win at BU was nice. But just that feeling of winning a conference championship, I'd never experienced that as a player, and doing it as a coach was just unreal. The worst might have been the very next year, though, when we lost in the championship. Because it's so hard to, you know how it is. It's so hard to win these conference tournaments. It's just so difficult. People get on coaches and teams for losing in the first round and second round. It's like, we're fortunate in our setup where you play kind of Wednesday, Saturday, so you're not playing back to back. But nonetheless, you're playing a team for the third time. In our league, there's such good coaches and good players that it's just a difficult thing to accomplish. And to get close and not get it done was heartbreaking.
Yeah, that definitely is. You had back-to-back years, one high and one low, and like those guys were special. I mean, I was just as happy for those guys not being there, just to see where they came from. And right. Like you said, like Brennan, a great coach, and you were still there, and so I was happy for those guys. I remember watching that game. So and I just asked this, like, maybe you haven't, maybe you have, and sometimes there's a moment somewhere. But what was the most stressful situation you have faced, in coaching?
I think it's funny. I think, and I've had, I was the director of ops, so when I was director of ops, and if you had asked me that question, the most stressful thing was making sure the bus driver got to the hotel the exact way Jeff wanted it. Because I was going to say my very first bus trip, I don't know if you remember, I got fired because the guy took a wrong trip on the way to West Virginia. So that felt very stressful. But I think then, as I became an assistant coach, you start to get stressed about different things. You couldn't care less about, how the bus drivers go into the game. You're more stressed about, your preparation. But I think we had some down years at AU where, I didn't feel like I recruited as well as I could have. So, it was stressful going into games, feeling like I hadn't done a good enough job. If that makes sense, because you try to do whatever you can to develop players, but you got to also get really good players. So I think the recruiting is stressful, but there was definitely a learning curve for me. That I think we've gotten better at AU. Obviously, this last couple of years, we've had good years, but I think that was definitely the most stressful. Though once I had become an assistant, and you're way more responsible for the actual outcome of the game.
This is kind of interesting because people don't think about it, because American University, very good academic institution. You got really good kids there, but I mean, things happen everywhere. But what is the strangest thing a player has done outside of the basketball court?
Oh, that might be your boy Cade Kager. Cade Kager, and we don't think it was him, but he was a little bit out to lunch. So the rest of the guys, where there was like 2 or 3 guys on the team, they never really came forward, but they had created a fake burner Twitter account called Confused Cade, where they would tweet Cade's thoughts as he was going through the day. So that was one of the wildest experiences, because when at first we didn't know whether it was Cade or somebody else, and it was just wild stuff. and we had to try to get it taken down. And it's like completely nothing to do with basketball. You know, I'm printing out tweets that say, you know, I remember one of the tweets, and I had a whole folder filled with them because we thought it was him and we were going to, you know, confront him or whatever. And one of the tweets was like, yeah, my coach is yelling at me and all I can think is, hey, bro, do you even lift? So that was, you know, that was something that we had to deal with.
That's okay. That's okay, Kager. You know
Oh,
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I would have guessed that was him. I would have guessed that.
No, it actually was like Marco. It was definitely Marco and Zach Elcano. Some combination of those two guys were the brains behind the operation.
Lenny.
Yeah.
You know, look, you've been fortunate. Like you worked for Jeff Jones for 3 years. You've seen your dad. You worked for Brennan for the last 7. But like, I think you're young. Like I said, young, bright assistant already. I think you should somehow be moving up, not get your own head job. But have you ever thought about, like, if you had a chance to work for anyone in men's college basketball, like, who would that be? Brennan, I'm not getting him in trouble. He loves working for you, trust me. But, like, if there's anyone in college basketball, who would that be and why? It could be an AD or another head coach. Like, is there anyone in particular?
Right. Well, that's a good question. Because like you said, the two guys that I have worked for do have like very contrasting styles of how they think about basketball and how we play. If I could work for anybody, it sounds cliche, but I would love to know how John Calipari gets those guys to play so hard every single night. You know, a guy like him, Izzo, you know, I just, whenever I turn the television on, and we tell it to our guys now, you know, sure you did when you were at Hofstra and ODU, you know, I always got a feeling when I'm watching, like, you know, the Michigan States, the Kentucky, the Purdue's, they're just playing so damn hard where, like, there's not a single moment where not all 5 guys aren't going, like, completely exhausting themselves. You know, and I think it's a fine line now in the, you know, the transfer kind of culture that we have of, you know, how hard can you coach guys? How much can you say, you know, or are they going to, you know, run and call mom and dad and want to transfer because you were, you know, quote unquote too mean or something. You know, and I got to imagine these guys, you know, like I said, Calipari must coach these guys hard as hell. And they respond, you know, so I would love to just be in that practice facility for a week, let alone a whole year to kind of see how he does it. It'd be very interesting.
That's a couple of good guys. Couple of good guys right there. And I can say this, from watching those teams this year, scouting those teams, it's amazing. Like, they're not only are they just talented, but they do play extremely hard. Right. And like, it's like a joy to watch those guys. It's unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. No, it's unbelievable.
And we kind of answered this because you talked about the NCAA, but it could be something else that pops up. Biggest accomplishment you've experienced since you've become a college coach?
I mean, on the floor accomplishment would definitely be going to the NCAA tournament. You know, I think over the last 4 years, be able to be a part of the turnaround at AU. You know, I mentioned that we had 2 bad seasons, you know, where I thought we had an unbelievable freshman, Saeed Nelson, 4 years ago, who, as a senior this past year, was the player of the year in the league. You know, in his freshman year, I want to say we won like 5 games. So just to be able to be on his staff and to watch Coach Brennan kind of mature that group and to add the players that we added, to be able to get that group from winning 5 games and finishing 10th, you know, to their senior years, their junior year finishing 4th, and their senior years finishing second. You know, that was I know we didn't win it. We didn't go to the NCAA tournament. You know, he didn't win the conference championship, but, you know, sometimes I think there's more in the accomplishment of the full season. and to be able to see that kind of maturation of that group was very enjoyable.
So good, man. That's so true. And this is kind of gonna stomp you a little bit. I don't know how far you got, like watching some of the other shows, but I know you like watch TV. I know you watch movies, so I'm sure I know Liza. What movie or TV show title best describes your week, like your work week or whatever?
Best describes my work week.
Or your week in general. Like what would it be?
Movie title. If I could be like Rose in Titanic. If so, I was the one that was on the board. You feel like you have so much to do, or you're not doing enough, and you're sinking, and then you figure out a way to survive.
I like that.
That's a little bit of a dark, a dark outlook on my week. So maybe that's not a good one. It does stump me a little bit. So Titanic until I text you in an hour and give you a different answer.
Okay. I like that. You've been around and like you've heard a lot of stuff from different coaches, or you might even have your own thing. Like, what's your favorite word or phrase?
When working for Coach Brennan, you better cut. It's not even a phrase. It's just a word. Get low on your drives and cut. No, I think there's I think there's every staff kind of has their own verbiage of stuff that they use within practice, and I think the stuff that Coach Brennan preaches really resonates with me, which is why I like coaching with him at American. Because I think all the stuff that we're telling guys makes sense basketball wise. But I would say cut, plain and simple. Get low on your cut and get by your man. Don't let him hold you.
I like that. But you know what I like? It was something better you said, and I say it all the time. I hear these guys say, man, I work for, I think you work with guys. And not work for them, because you're all in for the common goal. And you just said that you work with Coach Brendan. I thought that was good as well. Where is your happy place, Matt? Like, you could be in the office some days. It could be like you coming home, you just want to be like anything, but like, where is your happy place?
I would say it's Corolla, North Carolina, not far from where you went to college. The Outer Banks is definitely my happy place. On the beach, walking the dog with my family, with my wife, just kind of relaxing. My dog's trying to make his way onto the screen right now, but just on the beach in North Carolina.
Beautiful place. That's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
If you had to choose 3 adjectives to describe yourself, which would you choose?
First, I need to look up what an adjective is. I would say, shoot, can I put that question back to you? You worked for me for 3 years. Give me one to get going.
I would say hard work is one. I mean, that's definitely one. Like,
no, I would say like, and I try to, upbeat, I think is the most important. It was the one piece of advice that my dad gave me when I started coaching, after he tried to talk me out of it, was, he said, no matter what's going on, no matter what your wins and losses are, you got to go into the office in a good mood. He's like, it's not your job to be in a bad mood when you walk into the office every day. The head coach can be in a bad mood all he wants, but you're there to bring energy and be positive, have a positive outlook. So that's what I try to do. Not to say that I don't go through some moods during the season, but upbeat, energetic, relentless a little bit, like probably on guys, once they come down to practice, I want to get them, get them going, get them moving. Yeah. So, I mean, that's it. Yeah. I appreciate the hard working.
I've seen it, man.
Hungry
and I didn't even ask this, and it's funny. I I got to call your dad and ask him if he know some of the questions here, because like, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Shoot, that might have been it with coaching. What I just said. Yeah, I mean, I thought that was a really good piece of advice when he told me that, because I think it's so true. And growing up in a coaching family and seeing how much the wins and losses wear on the head coach, you know, I thought that, you know, being able to be in the office and get along with everybody, you know, it's something I took from you, to be honest. You know, it's, you know, when people ask me if, you know, Lamar Barrett, I'm like, yeah, he's the best. I was like, if you got a problem with Lamar, the problem is the person, not Lamar. Because every time you came into the office, it was, you know, we're chatting about the NBA or what's going on in college basketball. And, you know, we get to talking about our team, and you might have hard discussions or disagree or whatever. But it was always in a way, you know, that was, you know, we remain friends when we walk out the door. So I think that's important. And, you know, again, I take that back to what my dad had told me about, you know, being upbeat when you're in the office and not being, you know, never being in a bad mood, or trying to not be in a bad mood at least.
Appreciate that, Matt. Now, and this is probably easy, but I know you got to make sure you're right on this. What person or event has had the most influence on your life?
Person and or event. Person and or event. I mean, when I would say, does it have to be in coaching?
Don't have to be.
Well, my brother is a Navy SEAL, and when he graduated from and got pinned with the Navy SEAL emblem, that was as moving of an event as I've ever been to, and as proud as I've ever been in my life. You know, so you're probably supposed to say your wife. Supposed to say your wife in this with this answer. No, but I mean that and you know, I think getting married to Liza has put a lot of stuff into perspective. You know, enabled me to at least try to not let, you know, bring wins and losses home, and you know, I think her as a person and seeing how hard she works. You know, we're obviously, you know, in the middle of a pandemic, and she's, you know, a nurse manager at Sibley Hospital and dealing with COVID every day, and people that are, you know, dying, that, you know, families that can't come into the rooms. You know, it allows it to, for me at least, to take a step back and be like, hey, you know, basketball is important, recruiting is important, and winning is important, but you know, it's not even close to how stressful or how important, you know, some other jobs are that people are doing every single day.
Yeah. And shout out to Mike Wolff. I actually knew Mike before you, which is amazing. It was at Brown University, and he hung out with a lot of the basketball guys.
Running around the hockey house.
This will be one of the last ones, man. Just like you, like, and I'm gonna say younger, but knowing what you know now, what would you tell your younger self? You know, how to prepare for as an assistant coach.
Just to take in everything that you see and hear. You know, I hope I wasn't, but to never come off as like, you know, everything. You know, I think we all in coaching watch so much basketball, and we watch so much film to scout. You know, you think that you have answers, and, you know, a lot of times I'm wrong, you know. So, you know, I think the big thing that I would tell anybody getting into coaching is, you know, there's at minimum 4 other coaches in that office with you, you know, and you meet coaches on the road, and they have their feelings about basketball, and just listen and just try to take something from everybody, you know, good and bad. You know, we've all, me and you have both been around people you like to be around and don't like to be around. So I think it's like, you know, you take away the good and the bad, and personality wise, and then also basketball wise. And, you know, I'm always thinking about, you know, how you know, if I were ever to be a head coach, how are you going to play on offense? How are you going to play on defense? You know, how are you going to, what's your spiel going to be to a kid when you're talking to them about how you think about basketball and you want your program to be? So, you know, I think just taking little tidbits away from all the people that I've met and that I know in the profession, You know, that'd be the advice that I would give to anybody.
Awesome answer, man. I want to thank you again, Matt, for being a guest on the show and being unmasked. Anything you want to leave with the viewers?
Just despite what people think, I can beat my sister in one-on-one. I couldn't until I was like 14, but then once it happened. So I don't, you know, there was a lot of people who, you know, she was a terrific player, she still is, but I can beat her in one-on-one.
But if you ask her, she won't tell you that. She won't say that, but he's right. She was a terrific player. All right. Thank you, viewers, for watching another great show. Stay tuned for the next guest as we get them unmasked. See you next time, and stay safe.